Well, folks, we're just days away from the Senate Judiciary Committee in Washington, D.C., convening 4 days of hearings on Ketanji Jackson's nomination to replace Stephen Breyer on the United States Supreme Court. Aaron Dorr here, guys. The big update for gun owners. Come on in and watch this video. Guys, if you're pressed for time today, whatever else you do, take a moment and send your pre-written email to Senators Grassley and Ernst and tell them to do their job, stand up, and oppose this nomination to the United States Supreme Court. There's a link beneath this video. It goes right to their offices. If you're low on time, at least do that. Now, if you've been watching this process in the news over the last couple of weeks and months now, you've seen that Joe Biden is trying to present that Ketanji Jackson is a moderate, that she's a centrist style Democrat. She's not a big threat to gun owners. But of course, we all know you can't trust a word that comes out of China Joe Biden's mouth. You can't trust him to know what time it is, let alone to not lie to us when it comes to a Supreme Court nominee. The reality is that Ketanji Jackson is perhaps, I got a photograph of her somewhere. Ketanji Jackson is perhaps the most aggressive judicial activist to ever receive a nomination to sit on the United States Supreme Court. Joe Biden is desperately trying to get a win. He can't pass gun control right now in the Senate. And he's hoping by putting this absolute judicial activist on the bench, he can use that to buy some cover from all the gun control organizations who are angry at him for not passing gun control over the last 15, 16 months in Washington, D.C. So the reality about Ketanji Jackson is that she spent her entire adult life before she was a judge fighting for democratic causes that were trying to weaken our gun rights. In 2008, she worked on Barack Obama's campaign for the presidency. That should tell you all you have to know about her view when it comes to our gun rights. When she left that, she became a guest lecturer for the American Constitution Society in Washington, D.C. You might think to yourself, well, hey, it's a Constitution Society. That sounds great. Now, folks, the reality is that this is the most liberal think tank in all of Washington, D.C. right now. And so they were happy to have Ketanji come and lecture them because her ideology, her left-wing crazy ideology matches their own views when it comes to the Constitution and our gun rights in particular. And so now, these days, Ketanji Jackson is a federal judge in Washington, D.C. And that means she's gone through previous Senate confirmation hearings to get that position. And in her previous Supreme Court, nomination hearings, she has consistently refused to ever acknowledge that you or I, as gun owners, have an individual right to keep and bear arms. Ketanji Jackson has the same left-wing view in the Second Amendment, which is that this only applies to governmental interests or collective interests of various government entities. It does not give you and I an individual right to keep and bear arms. That is Ketanji Jackson's view. Of course, our view is that we have an individual, God-given, constitutionally codified, and Supreme Court acknowledged individual right to keep and bear arms. So for Ketanji, when she denies that, that means that she would always rule against our gun rights in the Supreme Court because she does not believe that you or I have an individual right to own any firearms, let alone AR-15s or magazines of more than 10 rounds or anything else. That is her view on your gun rights, and that is why Ketanji already has the endorsement, no surprise, right, of Everytown for Gun Safety, Moms Demand Action, Giffords Law Center, Brady Campaign, all of them. They know she's a radical leftist, and they also know that replacing Ketanji Jackson for Stephen Breyer is not just swapping out one anti-gun justice for the next. Stephen Breyer is an old, tired tyrant. Ketanji Jackson is young, and she has a very left-wing attitude when it comes to judicial activism. And she very clearly wants to spend the rest of her life trying to attack our gun rights and all the rest of our freedoms as well. It's not just on guns, with a sledgehammer. with her lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court. So we have got to do all we can to shut down this nomination. So please send your emails to Senator Grassley and Ernst immediately and tell them to oppose her. Now, here is the Iowa spin on this, the Iowa story on this. Chuck Grassley is the ranking member on the Judiciary Committee. He's the number one guy for the Republican conference in D.C. What he does, what he says, how he votes on her nomination will have a tremendous impact on the rest of the Republicans in Washington, D.C. So if Chuck Grassley stands up, if he does the right thing, if he condemns her nomination because of her horrific views on the Constitution and on our gun rights, that will go a long ways towards locking up other GOP opposition to this nomination. On the other hand, if Chuck Grassley wilts under the pressure again and he votes to confirm her, it's going to almost greenlight her nomination all the way to the United States Supreme Court. So they have got to hear from you immediately. Let's just be honest. Over the last couple of weeks and months in particular, Grassley and Ernst have been a major disappointment to Iowans, a major disappointment to gun owners in particular. You know, Joni Ernst was the leading sponsor alongside of Dick Durbin and Dianne Feinstein on the Violence Against Women Act, which was chock full of gun control. And as you guys know from our previous videos and previous emails on this, just a couple of weeks ago, 10 days ago, when Joe Biden took his budget appropriation, $1.9 trillion budget appropriation, he took the gun control language out of VAWA and he put it inside of that budget appropriation. And when most Republican senators in D.C. were a no vote on that because, number one, it was a $1.9 trillion boondoggle for Joe Biden, and number two, it had gun control, there was Joni Ernst and there was Chuck Grassley voting yes. Absolutely insulting for Iowans and for gun owners in general. You know, over the years, Chuck Grassley has told me personally and told Iowans in general that he believes more or less the president has the right to choose his own team. That's been it's been a recurring theme amongst Senate Republicans over the years. The president has the right to choose his own team. And there's this idea that as long as this nominee is professionally qualified, we can't oppose her. That's why Grassley collapsed, stabbed us in the back, and voted for Sonia Sotomayor under Obama's administration. He did the exact same thing on Elena Kagan and her nomination to the Supreme Court, if memory serves. I know for a fact he was a yes vote on Sotomayor. I believe he was on Kagan as well. And so that idea that we have to give the president his team as long as they're qualified, that may make him do the same thing here when it comes to Ketanji Jackson. Now, I don't know if there was ever a time when I would agree with that kind of decision-making metrics, but damn sure in 2022, with this madman in the White House and Supreme Court nominees like Ketanji Jackson, who openly state that you don't have an individual right to keep and bear arms. If there ever was a time that excuse held any water, it darn sure is not today. Today, we have Supreme Court nominees staring us in the face who want to destroy our right to keep and bear arms. So I don't care. Gun owners don't care. Americans don't care where she went to law school. We don't care if she's currently a judge or currently runs at Casey's gas station. We don't care. The point is, she is an enemy to our gun rights. She is an enemy to our Constitution. She is an enemy to our freedoms. And she's not even trying to hide it. And that's why Grassley and Ernst need to stand up and for once show some testicular fortitude and do the right thing and publicly oppose this nomination, especially for Chuck Grassley as the ranking member of this committee. So please email them right away, share our video, and urge everybody else you know who cares about freedom to do the exact same thing. There are major cases coming before the Supreme Court in the very near future. One of them is a challenge out of New York State, challenging the state's abusive, tyrannical may issue concealed carry permit process. The court's going to have to rule on that. But we're also likely going to see challenges in the near future on a variety of issues. The SEPA law out of Missouri may very well wind up in the United States Supreme Court, and soon. We're probably going to see a challenge on Joe Biden's executive orders that make criminals out of Iowans, out of Americans who own a pistol brace or an 80% lower receiver. These two laws are not laws at all. There was never a congressional hearing on this. There was never a vote in Congress on these. Joe Biden simply grabbed his pen, signed a paper, gave it to the ATF, and now we have bureaucratically administered regulatory gun control that never went through the Congress. And if Biden has his way, if we don't push back on this in the Supreme Court, you're going to have millions of Americans who are going to be facing the potential of felony charges because they own these items. Again, all the while, there was never a vote on them in court. The Supreme Court is going to have to answer or make a decision on whether or not this is constitutional. So there's lots of cases coming for the Supreme Court. We know the radical left is trying to use the court at all levels of the judiciary to attack our freedoms. And that's why we have got to fight hard to stop this nomination on the Supreme Court. You know, this happened last year, too. We all stood together as gun owners. We opposed David Chipman as ATF director, and we forced the Republicans to do the right thing and oppose that nomination. We can do it again with Ketanji Jackson if enough of us take action. Call Senator Grassley and Ernst, email them, contact them on Facebook, at a forum, any way you can, and tell them under no circumstances do I want you to approve this nominee for the Supreme Court. Don't forget, folks, we're only 6 months away, give or take, from the midterms. 6 months away from we the people possibly taking back both chambers of Congress. And if we control the Senate after November of this year, everything changes when it comes to Joe Biden's chances of putting judicial activists on the court. So it's time to stand up and fight hard, guys. Fire off your emails, share this video, and go to joinigo.com to get involved in our fight as a member today. Thank you very much. We'll keep you guys informed. Take care.